The house had always been quiet in the evenings, but that night felt different. The woman moved slowly around the dining room, placing plates on the table with careful hands. This was not just a house to her. It was the place where she had rebuilt her life piece by piece. Every corner held memories, some warm, some painful, but all of them were hers. She had invited her son and his wife for dinner. Nothing special, just a family meal. At least, that was what she had said. The table was set neatly. White plates, clean glasses, folded napkins, a simple meal, cooked with care. She wanted the night to feel normal, calm, respectful. When they arrived, the son greeted her with a quick smile. His wife followed behind him, dressed neatly, her face confident and relaxed, as if she already belonged everywhere she stood. They sat down together. The conversation started easily. Talk about work, talk about plans, talk about the future. The woman listened more than she spoke, her eyes quietly observing every movement. Every tone dot across the table. Her son ate quietly. He laughed when expected, nodded when spoken to, but something felt off. He did not meet his mother's eyes for long. Not once. Beside her sat another man. He was calm, well-dressed, and polite. To anyone else, he looked like a family friend. He spoke very little, only offering a gentle smile when spoken to. No one asked why he was there. The food was almost finished when it happened. The son's wife slowly pushed her chair back and stood up. The sound of the chair against the floor cut through the room. Everyone looked at her. She smiled. It was the kind of smile that carried confidence, the kind that expected agreement before the words were even spoken. "I think this is a good time to say it," she said lightly, her voice clear and steady. "We've made a decision." The room grew quiet. She placed one hand on the back of her chair and looked around the table, then finally toward the woman at the head of it. "We'll be selling this house," she continued, as if she were talking about the weather. "We're ready to start a new life. A fresh beginning." For a moment, no one moved. The son froze. His fork remained in his hand, halfway to his mouth. He stared at his plate as if it suddenly became very interesting. The air felt heavy, thick. Everyone waited for the woman's reaction. Anger would have made sense. Shock would have been normal. Tears would have been expected. But none of that came. Instead, the woman slowly leaned back in her chair. She did not raise her voice. She did not ask a question. She did not even look surprised. She smiled. Not a big smile, not a happy one, just calm, controlled. Knowing the son's wife's smile faltered for just a second, but she quickly hid it. The woman gently placed her napkin on the table. Then she turned her head slightly to the man sitting beside her. Her eyes met his. He gave a small, almost invisible nod. The room went silent. No one spoke. No one breathed. And in that silence, something became very clear. This dinner was never meant to be ordinary. It was only the beginning. The silence after the announcement stayed in the woman's mind long after the plates were cleared. But this story did not begin at that dinner table. Years earlier, the house had been nothing more than an empty building with cracked paint and cold rooms. She had stood in the doorway alone, holding the keys in her shaking hand, wondering if she was strong enough to start over. Her husband had passed away suddenly. One day he was there, and the next, the house was too quiet. The world moved on, but she had to learn how to breathe again. She worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs. She saved carefully, counting every bill, every coin. There were nights when she skipped meals so her son could eat well. Mornings when she smiled through tired eyes so he would not feel afraid. That house became her proof. Proof that she survived. Proof that she did not give up. When her son grew up and married, she opened the door to them without hesitation. They were young. They needed time. She believed family should help family. "You can stay here," she had said gently. "Save your money. Build your future." She did not ask for rent. She did not set rules. All she asked for was respect. At first, everything felt fine. The son's wife was polite in the beginning. She helped in the kitchen. She thanked her. She called it home, and the words sounded harmless. Then, but slowly, small things began to change. New furniture arrived without discussion. Walls were repainted. Decorations were replaced. The woman noticed her favorite chair moved to the corner. Her old photos placed in drawers. Comments followed. "We should change this room. This doesn't really fit our style. It'll look better once we fix it properly." The woman listened. She stayed quiet. She told herself it was temporary. That peace was more important than pride. But the tone changed with time. The son's wife began to speak with authority, making plans without asking. She invited guests without notice. She spoke as if decisions were already made. And the son? He stayed silent. He avoided conflict. He avoided his mother's eyes. When problems appeared, he chose comfort over courage. The woman saw it all. She felt it. The sheik did not explode. Sheik did not fight. Sheik did not argue. Instead, she prepared. She remembered the sacrifices she had made, the nights she had cried alone, the strength it took to stand when no one helped her. This house was not just walls and wood, it was her life, so she took quiet steps, she asked questions, she reviewed documents, she made sure everything was clear, secure, and protected. Not out of anger, out of wisdom. By the time the dinner invitation was sent, she already knew what was coming. She could feel it in the way her son spoke on the phone. Short answers, careful words. And when his wife arrived that night with confidence in her smile, the woman understood. This was not just about a house, it was about control. And as she sat at the table, listening to the bold announcement, one truth stood firm inside her heart. Kindness does not mean weakness, and silence does not mean surrender. She had stayed quiet for a long time, but she was ready. Asterisk. The air in the dining room felt heavier after the announcement, as if the walls themselves were listening. The son's wife remained standing. Her hands rested confidently on the back of her chair. She looked around the table, waiting for approval. Maybe even praise. No one spoke. The woman at the head of the table finally lifted her eyes. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "When did you decide this?" she asked. It was not an angry question. There was no accusation in it. That made it more uncomfortable. The son's wife let out a small laugh, brushing it off. "Oh, we've been talking about it for a while," she said. "It just makes sense. This house is too big for one person. Anyway." The words landed sharply. Batthison shifted in his seat. He cleared his throat, but said nothing. His eyes stayed on the table, fixed on a tiny scratch in the wood, as if it mattered more than what was happening. The woman nodded slowly. "I see." The son's wife took the nod as agreement. Her shoulders relaxed. She continued, more freely. "Now we've already looked at places. Somewhere closer to opportunities. A fresh start will be good for all of us." "For all of us," the woman repeated, softly. The son's wife said quickly. "Oh, of course. He'll be fine. You can downsize. Less responsibility. Less stress." A quiet breath moved through the room. The woman folded her hands together on the table. Her face showed no anger, no fear, only patience. "And you discussed this with my son?" she asked. The son flinched slightly at the sound of his name. He nodded without looking up. "We talked," he said quietly. The son's wife stepped in immediately. "He agrees," she said. "This is the best plan." The woman turned her eyes fully toward her son. Now, she waited. Seconds passed. He did not speak. Sat silent, said more than words ever could. The woman's gaze softened. Not with approval, but with understanding. She had seen this pattern before. Avoidance. Comfort. Letting others speak for him. She took a slow breath. "You seem very sure," she said, turning back to the standing woman. "Very confident." "Well," the son's wife replied, lifting her chin slightly. "It is our home now. We live here. We've invested time and effort into it." The room froze. The son finally looked up. His face was pale. The woman did not react right away. She let the words sit in the air, heavy and clear. "Our home," she repeated. "Yes," the son's wife said firmly. "That's how families work." For the first time that evening, the woman leaned back in her chair. She did not raise her voice. She did not correct her. Not yet. Instead, she turned her head slightly and looked at the quiet man sitting beside her. He had been watching everything closely. Every pause, every shift in tone. He met her eyes and gave a small nod. The son's wife noticed the exchange. "Who is he, exactly?" she asked, her voice sharp with sudden curiosity. The woman smiled faintly. "A guest," she said. "For now." That answer did not satisfy her. The son's wife crossed her arms. "I don't see why this needs to be complicated," she said. "We're a family." The woman held her gaze. "Yes," she said softly. "That's why I wanted everyone here." A strange feeling settled over the table. The confidence in the room began to tilt. Something was coming, and everyone could feel it. The room stayed still after the woman's last words. No one reached for their glass. No one touched their plate. The dinner that was meant to bring people together now felt like a test no one had studied for. The son's wife was the first to break the silence. "I still don't understand why this needs an audience," she said, her voice firm but edged with impatience. "This is a family matter." The woman turned toward her slowly. "It is," she replied. "That's exactly why I invited everyone." She then looked to the man beside her. "This is the person I mentioned earlier," she said calmly. "He's here to listen." The son's wife frowned. "Listen to what?" The man straightened in his chair, but did not speak yet. He placed his hands neatly on the table, waiting. The woman took a deep breath. Her voice remained steady. "I knew this conversation was coming," she said. "Nah, tonight, maybe, but soon." The son shifted in his seat. "What do you mean?" he asked. She looked at him gently. I mean that when someone begins to act like they own something, they usually plan to take it. The son's wife let out a short laugh. That's dramatic. Maybe, the woman replied, but I prefer being prepared. The son's wife's smile tightened. Prepared for what? The woman did not answer right away. Instead, she turned to the man beside her and gave a small nod. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. The sound of paper sliding against paper filled the room. That sound changed everything. The son's wife's eyes followed. The folder, her confidence beginning to waver. What is that? She asked. Documents. The man replied calmly for the first time. What kind of documents? She pressed. The woman spoke before he could answer. The kind that tell the truth. The son leaned forward now, worry clear on his face. Juan, what's going on? She met his eyes. There's no anger in her expression, only honesty. I wanted this to be clear, she said. Clear for everyone. The man opened the folder and placed it flat on the table. He did not push it toward anyone yet. He simply let it sit there, visible. The son's wife swallowed. You don't need papers to talk as a family. No, the woman said quietly, but sometimes papers speak when people don't. The son's wife's arms dropped to her sides. Her posture changed. The confidence she carried earlier was slipping. The man finally spoke again. I was asked to be here to explain facts, he said. Not opinions. The woman nodded. I invited him, so there would be no confusion later. The son's wife looked around the table, searching for support. No one met her eyes. This feels unnecessary, she said. We didn't come here to be challenged. The woman folded her hands. I didn't invite you to fight, she replied. I invited you to listen. The room felt smaller now, closer. Every breath sounded louder. The man closed the folder gently. Before we continue, he said, I should confirm that everyone understands why I'm here. The son's wife stared at the folder, her jaw tight. The woman turned to her and spoke slowly. Clearly I wanted the truth spoken out loud, she said. So no one could twist it later. The son's wife opened her mouth to speak, but the man raised one hand slightly. Please, he said calmly. Allow me one sentence. The woman nodded. The table leaned into the silence. One sentence was coming, and it would change everything. The man's voice was calm, but it carried weight. He did not raise it. He did not rush. He simply spoke as someone who was used to rooms, going quiet when he talked. I will be very clear, he said, resting his hand on the folder. This house belongs to one person. The son's wife straightened. We know that, she replied quickly. She's the owner. But we're family. That's not what this is about. The man nodded slightly. Actually, that is exactly what this is about. He opened the folder and slid a single paper forward, not toward the son's wife, but toward the center of the table, where everyone could see it. This property was purchased solely by her, he continued. Her name is the only one listed. There are no shared claims, no transfers, no future agreements. The son's wife frowned. We live here? Yes, the man said. You live here? That does not make you the owner. The room felt like it stopped breathing. The son shifted in his chair, his face tight. What does that mean? He asked quietly. The man turned to him. It means your mother has full legal control of this home. She can keep it, rent it, sell it, or leave it untouched. He paused, and no one else can make that decision for her. The son's wife let out a short, nervous laugh. That's not how family works. The man met her eyes. That's exactly how the law works. The woman at the head of the table remained silent. She did not interrupt. She did not explain. She allowed the truth to stand on its own. The man took a breath and spoke the sentence slowly, carefully, so there could be no misunderstanding. You have no legal right to sell this house. The words fell into the room like a stone dropped into still water. Noah spoke. The son's wife's face drained of color. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. The son stared at the paper on the table, his shoulders sinking as if something heavy had finally landed on him. The woman finally spoke. I never wanted it to come out this way, she said gently, but I needed it to be clear. The son's wife turned toward her sharply. You planned this? She said. You invited us here knowing this would happen. I planned to protect myself, the woman replied. There's a difference. The son's wife shook her head. We gave years to this house, and I gave my life to it, the woman said quietly. Before you ever stepped inside? The room stayed silent again. The man closed the folder. There is nothing further to explain, he said. The documents speak for themselves. The son's wife sat down slowly, as if her legs could no longer hold her. The confidence she had walked in with was gone. The woman did not smile. She did not look proud. She looked tired but steady. I opened my home out of love, she said. Not obligation. And love should never be used as a weapon. The son finally spoke. His voice was low. I didn't know it would go this far. She looked at him. It only goes as far as people push it. No one argued after that, because there was nothing left to argue about. The truth had been spoken, and it had silenced the table. Asterisk. The dinner ended without ceremony. Plates were left half-finished. Glasses sat untouched. The food had gone cold, but no one seemed to notice. Words felt heavy now, as if speaking them would only make things worse. The son's wife stood up first. She did not say goodbye. She picked up her bag, her movements stiff and hurried, and walked toward the door. The confidence she arrived with was gone, replaced by shock and embarrassment. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house longer than it should have. The son remained seated. He stared at the table for a long time, his hands resting in his lap. The weight of the evening finally settled on him. When he looked up, his eyes were tired. I never wanted it to happen like this, he said quietly. The woman nodded. Neither did I. The man who had spoken earlier stood and gathered his papers. He gave the woman a respectful nod and excused himself. His role was done. The truth had been delivered. When the door closed behind him, the house felt quieter than before. The son rubbed his face. I should have spoken up sooner, he admitted. I didn't think it would go this far. She looked at him, not with anger, but with clarity. Silence allows things to grow, she said gently. Not always in good ways. He swallowed. I'm sorry. The apology was small, but it was real. She accepted it with a nod. Not everything needed a long speech. Over the next few days, changes were made. Boundaries were set. Conversations happened, some uncomfortable, some honest. The son and his wife began making plans to move out. Not out of anger, but out of understanding that respect had been lost and needed the space to be rebuilt. The woman watched it all. Calmly, she did not celebrate. She did not boast. She simply continued living her life. In the mornings, she opened the windows and let sunlight fill the rooms. In the evenings, she sat in her favorite chair, again the one that had once been pushed aside. The house felt like hers again, not because she had proven ownership, but because she had reclaimed her voice. She thought about the years. She had stayed quiet to keep peace. The moments she had doubted herself. The fear of being seen as difficult instead of fair. She understood something now. Kindness without boundaries invites control. Love without clarity invites confusion. Strength does not always shout. Sometimes, it waits. The son visited her one afternoon alone. They drank tea in the same dining room where everything had changed. I see it now, he said softly. You weren't being harsh. You were protecting yourself. She smiled gently. I was teaching you something too. He nodded. I know. Life slowly returned to normal. Not the same normal as before, but a healthier one. The woman kept her routines, her peace, her home. And sometimes when she sat at the dining table, she thought about that night. Not with bitterness, but with quiet pride. She had not raised her voice. She had not argued. She had not fought. She had spoken one truth and allowed it to do the work. And that was enough.